Hey everybody, Jason from No Code V8. In this video, we're going to look at a recent update from Airtable. Yes, another one. They're coming thick and fast at the moment. This one's around field IDs. So a few weeks ago, I did a video that shows you how to pre-fill an Airtable form. And you do this by specifying the fields you want to pre-fill in the URL itself. Now, this works fine, but the problem is if somebody at a later date changes the name of that field, then all these links are going to break. So what field ID does is it exposes a unique ID for each field that you can use instead of the name. So this is not going to change, so we can specify the field ID. It doesn't matter if somebody at a later date changes the name. We're referencing the ID, so everything's going to work. So let's have a look at how this changes things. Okay, so let's have a look at a basic example here. So we have this table called feedback, and on this table we have the email address, some notes, and some ratings on the course. And the feedback form itself is just this. And when we open the feedback form, we can see that it's asking for the user, how the course was, some notes, and how the tutor was. But imagine we want to pre-fill this field here with the email address of the user that we're sending the form to. So what we need to do is just do these parameters again. So we have a question mark, and then we pre-fill underscore, and then the name of the field, in this case user, equals, and then the email address of the person. So let's just do that. And now when we refresh the screen, you can see that we've pre-filled the user field with the email address using the parameters here. So that's great. But if we go back to the table itself, and now let's imagine somebody at a later date changes this from user to email, everything works in the base. But if we go back and we refresh this now, what we see is this is broken now. There is no field called user, so this is not being filled in. So this is a problem if you've got URLs out there that are pre-filled that you're waiting to come back in. It's just going to break those URLs. So let's have a look at how this has changed with the field ID. So we're back in here into the feedback table. And what we can do, we can head over to manage fields. So this here now gives us an ID. So we can see this email, it's called email, it's a primary field, but it actually has a unique ID of this. And this exposes it. We can toggle these on and off. So if you can't see these fields, field ID, then you can just turn them on here. But now we have this unique ID that we can use. So if we just go back to our form, and now we swap out user for the field ID, we can see that this should now work. So we can see this is now worked. The email address is pre-filled. Now let's just go back and double check that. And let's just change this to something totally different. So let's call it title now. So the field is now called title. If we go back to the form here and we refresh, we can see that it's had no impact on this pre-filling here. So this is a better way of doing things. So we can use this field ID now instead of the name, and then we're not going to break things later on. So this also applies as well when you're sharing views in Airtable and you want to filter. So we have a table here called projects with various projects and various status in. And if we have a look at the link to the shared view, we can see when we share this view, we see all the fields. Now, maybe we want to only show the complete projects. So to do that, we can just put a filter in here again. So just a parameter, and this time filter underscore, and we could say status. So in this case, status equals done. And this is going to work because we have the field called status. But if we go back to here again and look, we get the manage fields and we get the field for status. So this here, the field ID, and head back over. So now instead of status, we change it to the field ID. It should still work, and it should still work if and when that name changes. So it's just a safer way of working with unique field IDs that are not going to change. So if you have the time, then go back and correct these if you're already using them. If not, then just make this as your best practice going forwards. Even though both will work, using a field ID is a much safer way of doing it. So I hope that's good. I hope you've learned something. Thank you for listening. See you again next time.